här på konferens. My name is Karina Kreko. I work here as a librarian. I'm very pleased to have you all here and be a part of this arrangement. If, in case of emergency, we have exit routes. Over there, I'm like a flight attendant. Yeah. And by the entrance, on the right side of the entrance, and in that section of the library where we have newspapers, you might have seen that room. There's where the exit routes are. And today, we are also sending this online at a YouTube channel, I believe. There you have, yes, she says yes. So, I'm not going to stand here for more time. You can please welcome Sofia Lagerlöf.
Thank you, Karina. And my microphone is really, really loud.
Yeah, I can.
Maybe this is better, right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Because it was too.
Yes, thumbs up from the behind. Perfect. Well, I will continue with Karina and say welcome to Kiruna and the library and being here today. I work as a culture strategist at the Kiruna municipality, and some of my chores is to work with relocation of cultural values from the old city to the new city center and how we can preserve it. I work a lot with my colleague Clara, who will be in the panel later, who is the municipality heritage officer. And one of my biggest tasks at the moment is working with the European Capital of Culture for 2029 for Kiruna. And this is being a part of it, being part of this conference and talking about this subject, our heritage, and how can we move further. How can we bring the past to the future, and what kind of community and city and municipality do we want to have around us? And how can we be part of making it that way? So today, it's been 2 really exciting weeks here in Kiruna. It's been a lot of things happening, as you probably see and heard and taken part of. But it's also been a lot of emotions on the inside for a lot of people. And after these weeks talking about what's happening around us, I think that's the important part of putting people first, as we say in this urban transformation and urban transition. And for me, being out there and see people get together, talk about what's happening around us, how that makes us feel, has been really beautiful. And I think that's what we need to do a bit more often. Come outside, take part of the things that are happening around us together, like we do today, so we can discuss the things that are being challenging, but also the things that are being nice and where we want to go. So I'm not going to talk too much now because we have really exciting speakers coming up, and they're going to give us some examples of how we can work with the community in this when things are happening around us. And the public lectures, the name of it today is Mining in Me, Communities in Action in Kiruna and Way Beyond. And I think I'm looking really much forward to listening to Marie and Guilherme, and also Marion will come up and introduce the conference. But one last thing, because being a resident of Kiruna and the municipality, a lot of researchers or artists or people from the outside come and do research about Kiruna and what's happening here. And for once, this is really nice to have this opportunity of having a public lecture so we can mix people from residents and people from Kiruna to meet with the people coming here and look at what's happening here. So take the opportunity to ask questions, be part of it, and let's learn together to go for the future and bring the past with us. Thank you and welcome. The lecture is going to be in English, but if you then want to ask questions in Swedish, we are happy to translate if you want, just so you know. So don't be afraid if you don't feel that English is your first language. We help each other.
Thank you, Karina, and also Sofia, for having us here in the public library of Kiruna City. I'm Marion Steiner. I'm president-elect of TICCIH. It's a great pleasure to be here and to have a public space to share with you what we are discussing in this Congress, which will last still until Saturday. and which opened 2 days ago. We are excited to be in an environment that we know is undergoing deep change. We are a global organization and community of industrial heritage experts and somehow freaks also working on these kind of special issues and also very conflictive issues. We as an organization are undergoing change too during this week. We are in a process of changing the board or part of the board. So on Friday we will hold our General Assembly as organization. I will then formally take on as new president of TICCIH. And we will be 20 people on the board. That is more than we had before because we want to be closer to the different territories on this planet Earth, where we have a lot of issues to deal with the legacy, but also with the future of industrial activities and human realities that are so different in the different parts of the world that it is difficult for us many times to understand each other. And I think that the new team that takes on the board on Friday, one of the distinctive things that we all share is that even if we sometimes don't understand each other, we can laugh about that, and we continue to listen to each other, and we want to understand the other people's local realities in order to find ways and probably also new words to talk about that. And that was very exciting when I have been here last year together with Miles Oglethorpe, TICCIH's current president, to make an inspection visit. Thanks to our colleagues from LTU who invited us. And we had also Curtis here, and we had a very exciting meeting in the City Hall with the mayor and also with the team, with Sofia and Clara, who made us a presentation that was still in the process by then of applicating for Kiruna to be Europe's Capital of Culture 2029. So that was also exciting to hear that there was already a lot of things being discussed in Kiruna from a more international perspective, and now we come as TICCIH and add a global perspective. So apart from being here today with beautiful people I will introduce to you in a second, we are also here to be happy to help or to support what you may need. We, as I said, there are new tendencies. You will hear more about that in the coming days of the Congress and probably also on the panel today, what TICCIH would like to do in order to be closer to the people and the places. So I have the great honor to introduce two wonderful colleagues that are new on the board. They take on Friday. One is my dear colleague Esperanza Rock, Maria Esperanza Rock Núñez from Chile. She is an ethnohistorian and anthropologist who has been living a long time in Chile and now moved to Germany, actually to the Ruhr region. You probably all know the Ruhr region for being a mining region and having been European Capital of Culture 2010 as a region. So there she is now living with her family, the two kids, husband, for 2 years, or perhaps a little bit more, in a program of Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, trying to make a sense out of the differences between the coal mining region in southern Chile, which is Lota, which she will talk about, and the Ruhr region, which is a very different thing in terms of scale and language. Nicht wahr? I could tell more about Esperanza, but I will not do that. You will discover her on your own. And I also want to introduce our dear colleague Guilherme Pozzer, who is a Brazilian from the start and is now living in Sheffield in England, which is also an interesting connection, being in two places that are kind of different, but a lot of industrial legacies present. And Guy is specialized, as is Esperanza, in community approaches and working with people. So he has a lot of examples to tell about not only how this is being dealt with in Brazil, but also he has been living in Portugal and in other places, and he is currently also having a fellowship based in the Ruhr region. So that is a connecting point between the two that even goes beyond what they also are both. They're also both members of NUDISUR, which is a Southern researchers network working together for many years. And I think it's such a wonderful thing that they are now both based in the Ruhr region, coming from different places and having lived in different places. And me personally, being from the Ruhr region and being German, but now living in Chile, I'm very intrigued about the week that we are having here, where we discuss about never-ending misunderstandings between cultures and local grants. So thank you for being here.
Okay. Was ist nun? Hallo? Hallo, hallo? Not working? Hallo? Can I speak loud?
Oh, use the hand mic?
Yeah, the hand mic.
Yeah.
Always means some technical interference.
It's like going to be a TV set show. I know.
So, yeah. I'll take that one. So,
There you go.
perfect.
Huh? Okay. Marie-Curie Compuche, Marie-Curie Lamien, Incheta Esperanza Rock Lamien, Incheta Esperanza Rock Piñen, Incheta Mulen Bochum Guarriameu. I always present more in a public lectures myself in Mapudungun, which is the language of our Mapuche community who we share our life, as you hear with the Samis, for example. I have been working in a very special place, as you have here, with a lot of cultural diversity and with a lot of issues, of course. But before to start my presentation, I really need to ask you a big favor. And it is just have 1 minute of our life to think about of all our deeply problems as a human being and try to think in keep the light on in ours inside and try to imagine the better world that we really want to build together. So for now, I just want to ask you for 1 minute of silence where you can think about all the crashing that we have been living in Gaza, in indigenous communities, in everywhere, even in our members. So just 1 minute to keep the light on inside of us and to think how we can contribute to the world peace. Thank you for that. So, I'm going to present to you some reflections on how we have been managed this diversity in Biobío region, where I come from. And yeah, let's see the objectives. Next slide, please. Well, I'm going to start with the objectives of the session here. So the most important thing for us is just to understand a global situation that we have and rethinking this global situation from a very local community it's something very special. So we are starting we have a starting point, of course, in research, but also in a communication with the diversity communities. So in one point, we have project, we have a lot of future, but in one other, we also have a lot of past and present, what we cannot forget. So the second point, so I will show you a little bit of this rethinking. And in Latin America and the most of global South, we have been running as researchers a quite huge movement that we call the decolonial swift or approach. And it's quite difficult to explain here because the decolonization, sometimes it's a little bit difficult for the country who have been colonized others. But, there you go. But the perspective is to having an approach to open the epistemology that we have been running the last years and to make a sense of being together, even with our differences. So this is the approach what I will share with you. And then I will share a little bit of the ecological theory and memory, which is a kind of decolonial perspective that I have been using to make a lot of activities with the communities. And then, we can start to reimagine our present and future. So, rethinking in common, does the modernity means for us? Next one. So as I say to you, I come from Chile, from this region, and I just swap the map. First, to provoke, because we are always having from the south this mind of go to this north. But sometimes our north is in other place, and we have to be able to see it. And we have a long coast, which is amazing. And we had a strong, heavy industry in this area, and the coal mines were under the ocean. So you can imagine how that feels, being under the ocean, like kilometers, with all this energy up you and the wetty feels of being in a tunnel. So next one. But basically, we also have environmental issues. And the beautiful landscape that we used to have, the industrialization make a huge transformation. And this tree that we call araucarias, and the araucarias start to die. But this is not a problem, maybe. The problem is for the Mapuche people and Aymara people and all the people from much more years than us in this territory. The dynasty of the trees means the dynasty of the humanity. So we need to recover in some point this knowledge And to make this green transformation is also to be together again and realize that maybe these trees also have something to say to us. Next one. But we also have a modernity life with microphones, traveling around, with cell phones, which is also nice to have. So the challenge is how we can combine this modernity with the spirit of being. Next one. So just to have a little context of where we have been working, So basically, as you see there, we have the Spanish colonization and the coal mine industry start in that time, where the land was a Mapuche land. So basically, when the republics become, like with our independence time, the republics have been built by the children of colonizers. So basically, they also put this idea from Europe to organize the land and the resources and everything. And the coal mine were there. So the Mapuche territory becomes the Chileans' ones very late, if you can see there. So, and as you have here also, the Mapuche community wants to call them as a Mapuche, not as a Chilean, because they are Mapuche and not Chilean. And that's okay. So, well, and then we have quite beautiful social movements, and the military coup just turned everything down. But we also have a lot of earthquakes to remind us that the earth is alive. And even if we have the best engineers in the world, the earth is alive. So next one. So basically, you can see like the big things around the industrialization, the closure, and how the people want to keep their memories alive. And as you see in the first pictures or photo, you can see the Mapuche people used to live in a ruca, which is their own ways of live. And we still have people who live in these houses. And the beautiful things is they change the houses year by year just to let the earth rest, because they don't believe that we need to extract things from there. And this is quite different of our modernity mentality. So this is something that we really need to learn in some way, understanding that, of course, we need some minerals, or we still need it. So next one. Well, more of the landscapes that we have in Lota. Next one. Yeah, X minus, next one. So this decolonial approach in industrial heritage studies becomes, next one, after a huge backgrounds of intellectual that we have, not just in Latin America, also in Portugal. So we have Silvia Rivera Cosicanqui and Arturo Escobar, Aníbal Quijano, Bonaventura Santos Sousa from Portugal, Enrique Dussel, Walter Millono. Maybe you don't know any one of them, but they also are now writing, I mean not now, they also have the English translation. So I think it's very important to start using other thinkings in this kind of reflection. So basically, next one. I'm not going to talk about what they say, each one, but what are they talking in their reflections and their research? They talk about the diversity, respect, recognition, collaboration in a system of domination that we need to realize, the competition, the technocracy, and the insensitivity. So they try to keep the light on in terms of realize that we also have other epistemologies to understand where we are and who we are. Next one. And it's much more easy if I can show you this picture, where we have the same head with 3 different meanings. So the first one, it's a style, as my husband, for example. The second one, it's because this man, it's a soldier. And the third one, it's because he's a cancer survivor. As well, the second line, this car can mean freedom for someone. The second one, it's a status symbol. And the last one, it's a polluter car. And the last one is this nice carpet that someone can buy it as a decor or a souvenir, and others can use it as a place of prayer. So what I want to share here is the idea that we have to be able to open our perspective and perception of the same things. Next one. So how the industries feels in the various communities. So a lot of communities in Latin America, to say, and in all around the world, feels that the exploitation of resources and labor, it's something very, very alive. But also that makes quite interesting transformation of social structures. Sorry, I'm just... Mom is so boring, I know. There's one, it's cultural displacement and omission of cosmologies, local knowledge and identities. They want to build, the industry really built a new identity, which is okay. And if you work with different labels community, you will realize that the past identity becomes in some way. And this is the beautiful things of the diversity. Then, the economic dependency and the underdevelopment, says Quijano, and other decolonial ones, and and we also have this symbolic violence. So I found this very nice, for me it's very nice picture, and says, las ruinas no me dan miedo. That means I'm not afraid of ruins, which is quite interesting phrase to understand also the devaluation, the nullification and omission. Next one. So basically, for a lot of communities, the colonization, it's still there, but the names now is the industrialization or the modernity or the neoliberalism system. We can also find in this narrative another kind of epistemology, as you can see here in the Presencia de América Latina of González Camarena, which is a very nice painter, Mexican artist, yeah. So it's quite interesting how he built a narrative of Latin America from Mexico until Chile, starting with all the Pantheon, the Mexican Pantheon, and with this couple. As you can see, it's a Mapuche woman with a Spanish. And the future, as you can see here, it's a quite mixing cultures and community and bodies also. But next one, of the central pyramid, it's about the industrialization and how this community represent this. And you can see all the women in the bottom as minerals. So the fertility, it's also represented in all the women's working. And yeah, I don't know if you can see the belly of the woman who is just laid down there. So, and then the last one, you can see the horsepowers representing 3 horses in a very beautiful way for me. But the thing is, the industrialization is a pivotal turn in our life. Not just for the Mapuche or Mexican community, it's for everyone. So this is something that we need to realize. Next one. And then I found recently this nice mural by Cristian Dimitri Silva. He is the artist. He's a local artist in Coronel. He lives in Coronel. And you can find in this narrative a very important starting point in the Mapuche beliefs and the cosmology and the original myth. So, yeah, I'm not going to explain all the things, but it is very important to realize that even in these days, we have artists who have these epistemologies alive and who really understand they are part of our history. So then you will find all the coal mine industrialization, and at the end, you will find also this family feeding his kids. But at the back, you will see all our missing in the military coup. So in the dictatorships, I don't know if you know, but it was quite strong in Chile. So as we can be able to read what the community is showing us, we also can be able to make some differences. Okay, next one. I'm running out of the time. So yeah, the beautiful things is this is in a waiting room in a dentist place. So, well, it's part of our culture just to mix everything, you know. Let's go to the next one. How we can understand the diversity of the human development in the different contexts. Next one. So, well, this is an inspiration of the ecological system of model of human development that they have been running Prof. and Brenner. Next one. So I took that to make this ecological model of the memory, just to put all the pieces together in one place. And there you can find some ideas of how we have been working in Chile with the communities just to rebuild the memories and to have the sense of the social means. So basically, all the circles are the diversity that we have, who have been involved in the memories, but also, and this is the most important place, is the relation that we can make between these circles. So when we talk about the community, we have to be able to describe each community that we have in the territory and how they are connected by the memories. As well, the academia, it is research and resources, and as well the local governments, and as well all this is symbolic system which contribute to the deeply understanding of these memories. Next one. So yeah, I'm just going to go forward, but this is a model with a theoretical fields, and basically we need to recognize the human diversity, the value of the differences, and a political state, not a particularly partisan to say. Okay, next one. So again, the different perspectives are very important to understand and to put it in one picture. So as you can see, this cat maybe is looking this fish as food, and this little one is just contemplated as something very special, and I cannot think what the fish is doing or thinking or feeling in this. But yeah, still inside. Next one. Well, a lot of collaborate management action have been done with different community. Next one. So yeah, the collaboration is not between specialists or owners of the truth, but rather it takes place in mutual respect. Next one. This is Humberto Maturana. Next one, who is intellectual from Chile also. We're going to go quite fast now. Sorry. Okay, the collaborative narrative of the working class. Next one. Next one. Okay, we also have a lot of social movement, even until these days. So the problem is for whom we are doing everything. And it is quite interesting because they are not just fighting, they are putting solution in the narrative. And because they are fighting, sometimes we are not able to really realize that they are giving us the answers of so many things. So be aware of that. Come on, the next one. Next one. Next one. I want to go just, well, the popular culture is not a passive reflection of society, but a space of resistance and transformation. To our whole. Next one. Well, there are not conclusion, only restarting. Next one. So the industrial heritage for so many years have been dealing with this question, what, how, and for whom. But I think with this turn of understanding, we need to ask us who, how, and for what. Next one. So this is something very interesting. So the practice of applied critical and decolonial research, you will find this equality, inquiety, our reality sometimes. But what we want is to make the liberation, just to put and be open to receive everything, to able to recognize and be respectful of the differences. Next one. Yeah, Kawiniemos, this is a beautiful painting from Kawiniemos is a Mapuche name also, but we can go forward to the last thing, that one. That one, it's the last one, sorry. It's a very important news for Chile and the community, because the Mapuche community now are open and able to do the Huetripanto, which is the most important rituals and celebration that they have each year in the industrial site. So that means if they are able to join us, to help us to recover the spirit of the trees and the land after a closure, it is very important for us to be able to listen them. So, yeah, the last, I think, well, basically, of course, the transformations began from knowledge, but the knowledge not is always in the books or in the history, because we still have a lot to write. And the critical and decolonial perspective, it's very useful for the colonial places, but also when you can found the diversities communities. So it's something very, very important to have. And the collaboration, it is maybe the core thing that we need to do to be creative, flexible, and open to understand that we can be together by the respect of recognize the differences. I don't know if I have another one. There you go. Tal Tumai, thank you. Gracias, merci. That's it.
Yes, thank you, Maria. And we go for Guy, and then there's a question in the end.
It is working.
Hello.
Yeah.
Station. No está bien nada. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the organization, for the invitation, for the trust, because I'm substituting Professor Stefan Berger, and it's definitely an honor, but I can assure you that is an even greater challenge for me to speak in his place. So, when the slides can come. So, just to compliment improving the description of the places where I belong that Marion gave. I'm Brazilian. I lived in Portugal, Spain, studied, also worked in the UK, Germany. So, but one thing that I kept and that I saw myself a lot when Esperanza was talking is that we share also the Latin America identity. We are Latins. So my talk today is called The Politics of Belonging, Creativity, Memory and Heritage to Reimagine Post-Industrial Legacies. I'm going to start with a brief description of the main limitations that heritage projects face, not only industrial heritage, but in general. Then we are going to discuss a little bit of approaches that can help us to face these challenges, and discuss a little bit of theoretical frameworks that can improve our approach with communities and with the projects themselves. Please, next one. So the first thing that we have to recognize is that heritage is a contested field. It's a political field in itself, and the power dynamics in the heritage making is something that in every project and every research or whatever we are going to face. It's not something that we can avoid, but it's something that we have to deal with in a way that allow us to, from my perspective, to be more democratic, inclusive, and respectful towards the past. Not reverent, but respectful. Next one, please. So I think everyone that ever read about heritage or visited a heritage site or a museum or read a book or participated in a research project will have identified some of the limitations of traditional heritage conservation. One of them being that heritage studies, or in general heritage projects, can misrepresent some communities, or they can be underrepresented, or sometimes they are purposely forgot. So, and there I'm using a concept from Paul Ricoeur which is the active forgetting, when heritage projects themselves, memory narratives, historical narratives, avoid representing and including certain groups in a society. So inclusion itself remains often at the level of representation and tokenism sometimes, and not effectively create a space where people can participate, intervene, and act not only on their heritage in practice, but also on how to build the narratives about themselves. So what we need is probably a shift, to shift the focus from this mere conservation to a recognition that of this dynamic relationship between communities and the heritage, and address the problems without trying to avoid them. Next one, please. So the main question that drives to address these limitations is exactly how to address these dynamic relationships between communities and their heritage. And which approaches can we find to move beyond this, next please, beyond the conservation or representation to effectively bring inclusion to our actions in heritage. Next one, please. Cool. So the first approach that I try to use in my research currently is the community-based approach. And what I bring here are the 10 commandments, as I called, of the community-based approach. First, we have to address either history, the past, or a community, recognizing and respecting the cultural knowledge, traditions, and their values. So having the cultural humility is very important. Collaborating with these partners in an equal manner is also something that we have to practice and not only tell that we're going to do it. That's why sometimes, particularly from academia, it's very hard to share the power on the research. When we are designing a project, when we are designing an action, are we able to effectively collaborate and share the power of decision making in this heritage making? All of this so we can have an active community participation that will, in the end, mutually benefit the researcher, the communities, sometimes all other stakeholders that are involved. Having in mind that one of the goals, because heritage from my perspective is not only about things, but it's more about people and the value that they give to these things. We have also to have always in mind that we are seeking social justice and try to provide to our colleagues and our partners, I don't like the word stakeholders, the partners, a way of learning, of them to learn from us and us learning from them. So the capacity building is not from top down, but in a more horizontal way. So all projects should be, from the perspective of community-based approach, should be transformative. It should effectively change something, even if in a small scale, doesn't have to be a big scale, but we have to think always on change. Next one, please. And the second approach that I will bring to you is the arts-based approach. particularly because I think art can be a heritage tool for research. We can use art as a tool for research. And that would allow us to overcome the lack of diversity sometimes that we have in historical representation and inclusion. We can challenge idealized versions of the past. We can challenge the dominant memories that sometimes we find represented in heritage actions. We can encourage new interpretations about the past and about the present. And we can understand how memory not only is written, but also how it is effectively experienced by people in their communities. Next one, please. So now I'm going to share with you 4 case studies, just for you to check how sometimes simple an action can be, at the same time that how interesting and impactful it can be. The first one is a project developed by Karsten Feld, who also is part of NUDISUR. I first met him many years ago, 10 years ago actually, and he developed a project called Perception Workshops, in which the public participate in these visits in heritage sites, and they have a sensory experience on the sites, trying to promote engagement, effective engagement with history, memory, and placemaking. And this is interesting because we have to remember that this engagement with material culture from the perspective of archaeology, it allows the sensory experimentation of memory, as Jones pointed. Next one, please. The second project that I will share with you is the Textile project. It's textile, not textile, because it's a project developed in Spain, in Seville, in 2013, by Professor Julián Sobrino, and it incorporates art and action research. It was developed in a factory called a former textile factory, hence the name, called ITASA. Can you pass the next slide, please? And the next one. And ITASA was a factory that worked from 1938 to 2012. And it's a huge industrial complex that after the closure, a bit before the closure, we know that the industrialization doesn't happen at once and the buildings are not all abandoned at once. But as the buildings were being abandoned, some members of the communities and the neighborhood of former workers started to occupy the buildings, to create a gym, a dance studio. And after many attempts of trying to keep the textile production, they finally give up, and alternative uses to the spaces were created. Next one, please. This is how ITASA was a few years ago. All the buildings were in this state. But 2 alternatives for the use that I can bring to you. One is called Los Huertos de Itasal, in which they used a huge building, one of the buildings, to create a mushroom farm. So they removed parts of the building, built that huge box where they were doing the mushroom farming. Unfortunately, due to the pandemics, the venture failed. Survived for 10 years, but it didn't survive the pandemics. And a second one that I would like to bring to you is the Teatro Távora. It's a theater that was created by Salvador Távora, that gentleman over there, who died in 2019. And he was a wielder in the. He created the theater, and when one of the first buildings was abandoned, and the theater now has almost 40 years, and is still working strong. We're very accessible, and because of this accessibility, the community can have access to arts, play, music, anything that they project there. Next one, please. The last one is a very tiny little project that I ran last year in the University of Sheffield. It's called Crafting the Past, Empowering Communities Through Creative Writing, Visual Narratives, Memories, and Placemaking. Next, please. It was inspired by a very small book. That's not an advertisement. After I finished my PhD, I needed a break of academic writing. So I decided to put stories, to use the stories that I couldn't publish in the thesis, and some perceptions that I couldn't put in an academic format. I decided to create short stories, poems, and drawings that I did. And when I finished the book, when it was published, I started thinking on a way of using these techniques to engage communities with their heritage, and not being myself writing down their stories, but allowing them to learn techniques in which they could use to produce placemaking, or to produce a sense of memory, or anything that they wanted to share. Next one, please. So we developed a series of creative writing and visual narratives workshops, in which I was teaching ways by which people could express themselves, creating short stories, even if they were real, if they were not real, but as long as they were connected with their past. So, but I didn't create the project by myself. Before even submitting the project to the university evaluation, I sought for assistance, and I sought for partnerships. And I was very welcomed by a group called Join Up Heritage Sheffield. And Sheffield is in an interesting context, because it's a very deindustrialized city, a steel city as it is called, and has loads of community groups that are interested in heritage and in history, and that they love to share their stories. So this is one of the most interesting things. And the Join Up Heritage Sheffield is not only a heritage community group. They are very much involved with policy making around heritage. They developed in 2019 the first grassroots heritage strategy from the UK for Sheffield. In the UK, it's the first one, and it was all developed by them. And in 2021, it was adopted by the council. So it was, and it's interesting that the council simply adopted and negotiated with the group. They did not impose anything. They dealt in partnership with the communities that are involved in the project. So it's interesting to think that, coming back to the word stakeholders, these different stakeholders are very much interested in a partnership so they can move forward toward heritage making in Sheffield. Next one, please. So what was the main objective of the project? Was to empower communities to share memories and cultural heritage, and later, in the stage that we are now, offer evidence of how industrial memories can shape the existing strategy, heritage strategy. We decided to provide these tools for creative expressions and explore the diversity of impacts on the experiences with industrial heritage in Sheffield. We are going to try to assess the impacts of dominant memories and narratives in Sheffield, exactly on this civic engagement with the past and the city. And in the end, we generated different community-led narratives about Sheffield's industrial past, but not only industrial past. People started to share different narratives about what they thought was important to them about Sheffield's past and how it impacted on their identity making and sense of belonging. And in the end, we produced a small book, which can be downloaded. It's for free. I will speak a bit more about the project itself tomorrow. Tomorrow, no, Friday, no, tomorrow. And I'm going to share with you some examples of the community productions to show how they were really engaged on how to express their sense of belonging. So the first one is a short story from Ethel Makeda. She is a Zimbabwe refugee, and she shared a story about the Sheffield General Cemetery. And it's a beautiful story. She says, how does a place where people are laid to rest, a constant reminder of death, a collection of stones bearing inscriptions of dates, names, and logs who belonged to whom, all grey and half crumbling, become the place of a sanctuary, a place for quiet reflection, a place to listen to a book on Audible or your favorite playlist, the best world music 2022. She uses to go to the cemetery just to reflect on her life. It's a beautiful cemetery. And she says, she continues, how do the voices of loved ones, long gone, whose graves you've never seen, a grandma's laugh, a sister's giggle, an aunt's playful rebuke reverberate in this place of silence and loneliness? How is it that you find serenity here in Sheffield General Cemetery and not in the memory of a cemetery thousands of miles away where your loved ones rest? So it's a very powerful message of how she deals with grief, with approaching and engaging with Sheffield's heritage. Next one. Next one was a drawing that it's very simple but speaks volumes about how the participant views how is the interaction between urban transformation and built heritage in the city. Next one. This small story is from Carl Clayton. I will read just the end because it speaks a lot about how people view sometimes the South Yorkshire citizens and culture. He says, it's the last part. It was the small things, like whenever you got in Sheffield, on a Sheffield bus, the bus driver would always address you as love, a completely gender-free expression. Men and women were both addressed as love. And you always said thank you to the bus driver when you got off again. It was just a lot more relaxed and friendly place. I really felt that this could be my home. And it's interesting because a few months ago I was speaking to a friend of mine who lived in London, and he moved to Sheffield last year. And he told me, you cannot believe what happened. Someone in the supermarket called me love. And he said, I said, who called you? It was a man. That's so cool because it was a man. He was like really expecting. He said, I was expecting some man to call me love. Next one, please. So that's an example of what people can see as what we call immaterial or intangible heritage. This one is a small drawing and a text called TICCIH. Situated in one of the most deprived wards in the UK in terms of education, employment, and mortality, I leave it here. The walls are made of mud and small stones. The chimney is falling down, housing unchanged in 500 years. Why Deborah's artwork is interesting? Because when we are on the workshops, I brought them around 25, 30 books about Sheffield history, photographies, everything. And while she was reading one of the books or looking to the pictures, she found, oh, I lived here when I was a child. So it was a very emotional moment for her. Next one, please. And this is just a drawing about a Sheffield building formerly loved. If you know Sheffield, or if you look about Sheffield, there are loads of buildings that are not currently used and that are derelict and that still need to find a purpose, or not. Next one, please. Just to finish. It's never static, it flows. Rhonda, she shared with me in the workshop her passion by the carnival. And in the end, she says that carnival is never static, it flows. And for me, her piece reminds me of Heraclitus when he said, the Greek, that a person never crosses a river twice, because the person and the river changed. And the same, I think the same can be applied for heritage. It is never static and it flows exactly because the people change and our values changed. So how can we, next one please. We're approaching the end. How can we impact on the sense of belonging to promote this effective inclusion in processes of heritage making? And I will share with you just three theoretical frameworks, which is widely accessible. I'm not offering any answer, but I'm pinching possibilities that any project can use. The first, so what are the frameworks? Next one, please. To navigate this politics of belonging. The first one for me is that I think it's very important in a heritage action, is to recognize how memory is built. And that we should move from a singular narrative to collaborative memory making. Memory studies have found loads of ways. Next one, please. Loads of ways of thinking how memory is processed in a society. Can be memory can be framed. We can have a war of memories, multi-directional memories, and an agonistic memory. And I would like to share just a little bit about the agonistic memory for two reasons. One, Professor Stefan Berger, who should be here, is a specialist in this and is potentially one of the frameworks that are more aligned with community-based approaches and arts-based approaches. So the agonistic memory is a next one please, is a theoretical framework developed by Anna Sentelbu and Hans Lauge Hansen that offers a third way between two dominant modes of remembering the past. What they call the antagonistic memory, that creates us versus them, and the cosmopolitan memory that focuses on universal human suffering, but depoliticizes the context. Its key features are a radical multi-perspectivism, the importance of historical contextualization, the recognition that memory and heritage are an emotional field also, and that the conflict that is intrinsic to this field should be embraced and not avoided. It can promote a bottom-up participation, a more horizontal approach to heritage making, and restore the agency of communities when they became not only in the secondary people in their own history. The main benefits for heritage making of this approach for myself is that it creates a more representative heritage narrative. It prevents heritage from becoming a tool for exclusion. It builds capacity in a more democratic way, particularly handling stories, difficult stories, and transform what enemies into collaborators, or at least into people who can dialogue about the difficult past. The second framework that I'm sharing is the transversal politics. It's a coalition building approach developed by Italian feminists and theorized by Nira Yuval Davis. It offers an alternative to both exclusionary universalism and essentialist identity politics by emphasizing the dialogue between across difference while maintaining equality and respect. It validates multiple heritage narratives. It can be used to enhance the sense of belonging, promoting effective inclusion, and its great advantage from my perspective is that it focuses on shared values: preservation, respect, justice, that cut across different heritage communities. Last one, please. The last one is more than a framework, is a technique called emotion networking, where it's a methodology where that explores the complex web of emotions surrounding heritage items or places. Rather than assuming shared feelings, that shared feelings create heritage, it recognizes that same cultural object can evoke conflicting emotions: love, rejection, pride, or pain among different people. And what is interesting about this is that emotion can also be a political field, especially in this context that we live today. And last but not least, I think these approaches allow us to connect heritage with people through the community-based research and the arts. The frameworks can be combined with these approaches, and it will allow us not only to represent communities and citizens, but also include them effectively in projects, potentially to bring transformative and positive changes in a given society. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And I think if we get the panel up on stage, maybe everyone just want to stand up, stretch your legs, and like shake off a little bit. So we have a couple of minutes for questions. Don't worry, I try to wave, but have some water, and we're going to have Marion and Clara up on stage.
I move this.
have a seat.
Okay, I think are you ready? Guy, Maria, Marion, Clara? One extra? I think, no, but I think it's, yeah, okay.
If you want to have some water. So, this is...
One extra chair. Moving. Perfect, okay, it's end of the day. Probably all of you had a really long day, listened to a lot of lectures. I'm going to send off this microphone to the end of. So before I start, I hope you enjoy the speeches and well. Okay, jag kan stå här. I jump off the stage. Yeah. We have one microphone. If anyone wants to jumpstart, have a question straight on top of your mind. Otherwise, maybe Marion, do you want to do a reflection on?
Well, actually, I know my colleagues well. I'm always impressed when they talk because it's, as he said, Latin people find very nice words and methods that I think are not that used in countries where we come from, Germany and Sweden. So thank you both very much for being here, for presenting this. Stefan Berger was mentioned. He is a German professor at the Institute for Social Movements at the Ruhr University Bochum, who cannot be here. But it's even better, I think, for us here on the panel today to have a Chilean and a Brazilian and a Latin perspective of what you are doing here and is happening here in the far north. So I would be really curious to stop talking me, because I would like to listen to you two, what you think about this and what you see in this, what is perhaps new for you, or what you're doing here and what you're planning, preparing for Kiruna 2029. And perhaps after that I can do more reflections.
Yes, hello. So I am Clara Nyström. I work as the heritage officer for the municipality. So I work a lot, of course, with the city transformation, relocation of buildings. We have moved art piece and a lot of documentation projects. And I really like the way you talked about memory a lot and also emotions, because the social values is harder to work with than like materials, like houses and so on. And the main reason that we are relocating a building is, of course, to preserve the cultural value, but also we feel that it's a way to bring some memories. That in all these new things, you can see things that you remember from your own life, not only the buildings, but maybe what you did in the buildings. Because also this, as I said, the social value is harder to bring. And I also like this crafting the past. I think that sounds really interesting. I will listen to you tomorrow or Friday. I don't remember. Tomorrow. And also for 2029, that is something that we discovered, that this memory, we also have to create new memories. And you talked also about like different perspective, how you saw things. And also, I can say that the selection of building is the cultural value, but we have started also to talk about maybe we have to have a different selections where we get these social values, like places that people like to visit, like a cafe. We have a popular coffee shop. It's not there yet because it's demolished, but there was something really that people liked and missed. So I think, of course, we have to have different perspective. And it was one thing more, but I don't remember. Maybe I don't remember because, yes, the memory is short. I've talked to people about the old Kiruna and the old city center, the houses that were demolished for 2 years ago, a big part, and just reopen as this park. So you still can visit the park if you try to remember to visit the land, but of course the buildings is not there yet. And people have started to forget how it felt like, how it looked like. And it's only been 2 years, so of course we have to preserve these memories and also preserve the memories we are creating as a city transformation. Not only old memories, but the memories from this period now. We also have to try to collect.
Yes, there's a lot to take in from this. But I also, as Marion said, a lot of words you use are really affected to emotions and sharing and doing things together. I did put a lot of them down, and I think that's important when we're talking this. In Kiruna, we often, as you said, Clara, talk about these hard values, the buildings, the iron ore needs to come out, the roads and everything's under the roads. But and what we saw before we even applied for European Capital of Culture for 2029, it was because we had these challenges, and we heard from people in the city that this is affecting us, and how can we work with it? How can we preserve memories, and how can we talk about what's been here before if we cannot see it anymore? So that was kind of the starting point, and our bid for European Capital of Culture is movement below ground, on earth, in space. And as you can know, when being in Kiruna, things are moving here, and we can feel it in our bodies and in our houses, them shaking, but also inside of us. It is emotional, and we can feel this thing is happening, but how do we react to this, and how can we use this process of grief and sorrow and sadness, but also to have the feeling of being let to be happy for something new, for the future. And I put all of those things in is a way of working with arts and culture to actually address these questions. And I think that's what we try to do. And I do feel from this week that this is really a good starting point, because we also had a chance with this congress coming here that we could use also this building up at TICCIH, our hotspot, where we can also show something, show memories, and talk about the future, and ask the children or the young people, what do you want with this place? So I think, kind of got in starting small, of building our way to 2029. Being a European capital of culture doesn't mean we are one now, but that we want to be something later, and that we want to also preserve something for later. After 2029, what do we want to be then, and what do we want to be building on the future? And also in our bid, you also talk about these different narratives and different stories and different memories, and to remember that we are all unique persons, and everyone carry their own memories or their own backgrounds, and how do we combine all of those narratives in this? I think that's a really interesting point of view, and that we can share the same place, and all of us live there, this is our place, but for people it is different, and we have different stories to tell. And we have one project called Practice Our Knowledge that kind of also is a crafting like how can we work with what we had for the future. So really interesting, and also to where I am now, this is a starting point, but how do we get further in this action? What can we do, and how do we get from a paper product or a good examples to something that we can combine together and work with the community, work with the people living here, not just us getting paid for working and addressing these questions, but how do we get to the next step? So that's where we are now, start this community building and start collecting this, and then take the next step. Looking forward to that. It's not easy. I mean, as you know, being in Kiruna, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of different challenges from every angle, and land of use, and what we want to serve, and who say we say this and not that, and so on. So there's a lot of things to bear in mind and juggle at the same time. But it's also fun most of the time. But then if I'm going to turn back the question, if I ask, for you being here in Kiruna just for a couple of days, do you have any, like, what do you see, the feeling, or can you see our cultural heritage or industrial heritage? And maybe it's just a short reflection about being in Kiruna and the first feeling stepping out and walking around here at the moment.
Can I start? I think you're living in a very important and opportunity situation to make a lot of reparations, as you can feel here in this quite similar land or territory as we had in southern Chile. So the transformation can be also be a quite huge opportunity to combine the diversity that you still have here as a treasure of the past, the present and the future. So yeah, of course it's so much effort. Move the city, you know, it's like crazy to say something gentle.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it is a crazy thing, and understandable also as a complexity that we know, and all these narratives of being the capital and also new things and a lot of technology, but you also still have the treasure of the knowledge of the earth, which is quite important. So I feel you both have a quite huge challenge, but a beautiful one, and not just to care the people who is really enjoying the city, but also all the environment. So yeah, thank you for all you've been done.
When I spoke, when I prepared a presentation a few weeks ago, and I wrote in one of the slides that heritage is dynamic. When I got here and heard about the city, what's happening, you took this to another level. Because it's really dynamic. It's like physically dynamic. It's changing, like literally. And I think you are adding another layer of complexity to the whole process. But also, I'm not a nihilist about, but I'm not a static about heritage. And it's just everything that's happening with your heritage, even if we consider the landscape as a heritage, the urban landscape. It changes, it has to change, it has to move, because even if we don't want it, will change. Time is inevitable. It will eventually make the change for us. So I think the best opportunity that Esperanza was talking is to create tools to deal with the change in a better way than what we did in the past.
Yeah, thank you.
And I could add a perspective from the Ruhr region where I come from, because I do my best to do my immersion work in Chile, but I end up being German always. And I must say that I was feeling quite at home here in the new town of Kiruna in the last days, and also last year when I came. It was a great surprise, perhaps, of my Latin colleagues, but that's because I come from the only new town the Ruhr region has ever built, which is the Neue Stadt Wulfen in the northern part of the Ruhr region. And I started to think about connections that are still developing in my mind. One could do on that between Kiruna and the Ruhr region as mining regions, and wanting to build the city for the future. That was the big dream for Wulfen, which started to be built in 1961, and never became the great city it wanted to be, but still was a place of utopia. And everything was built from anew, the schools too. And and it was in a time of a social democratic visionary movement that took place particularly in North Rhine-Westphalia that motivated also people thinking differently to move there and to start a whole new education program at the Gesamtschule, the comprehensive school they built there, which is where I got socialized and which is where, thanks to the teachers that were there, they were thinking the future differently, and that is where I grew up in a little bubble, which I didn't know, and I'm still not out of that bubble. But believing in international solidarity, of the need to connect between each other, believing in world peace, and growing up as a little girl in an environment that was green, where cars had their own streets, and we as people were walking around and climbing on trees, and we didn't see those cars. Only when we went for summer holiday was the caravan to France, once to Sweden, once to Yugoslavia, mainly to Spain. And I have the feeling that even I should come back to write something about the Ruhr region from these experiences, because this place of believing in the possibility of building a better future, even that if you intellectually know that it's not possible or very little realistic, but this belief is there, and it has been constructed as a city pattern. And I think that is I started to think about that over the past days. And what is definitely a great difference between Kiruna and the Ruhr region, as Germany is such a dense city, is that you have the possibility here to just close a conference on Saturday, sleep one more night, and then disappear in the forests and see no one for a week, and no house and nothing at all. Perhaps meet an elk or a moose or a reindeer. But even, you just park the rented car, walk some meters, and then you are on a floating little house on the Lüle River, and sit there and have your more than 1 minute of silence to think about the meaning of life, to quote Monty Python. So yeah, that's a new reflection for me. And
can I just take the opportunity, because you mentioned the idea of utopia, and one thing that caught my attention, because they're planning a new city. In the 19th century, they planned loads of cities, and Brasilia, where I lived, was also planned. And most of these cities, La Plata, Washington, Belo Horizonte, in Brasilia, they were all built on top of the idea of utopian society, or utopian urbanism. And it reminds me that we have to remember that utopias and dystopias, they are just the same thing, but on the opposite side. What in one place is the ideal organization, in the other is the control over the population. And always when I remember utopias, I remember Eduardo Galeano, Uruguayan journalist and writer and historian. He in a documentary called Sangue Latino, Latin Blood, he says that he tells a story that it's not his, it's from a friend of his, whose name I don't remember, and in which he was asked, what are utopias for? And the best way he found to explain was that utopias are like the horizon. You walk a little bit and the horizon goes further. You walk a little bit more, the horizon goes further. So what are utopias for? For us to keep walking. That's his answer. So when you think that all the change that you can build in this new city, you have to remind that you will always keep walking, and it will never stop.
Just put on good shoes then.
And I wanted to add another point that we have been discussing yesterday, also walking around, which is the advantage that I have, maybe that I have been here last year and also stayed a little longer and went to these forests. Anyway, but what was very interesting to see for me last year, and now discussing with my particularly colleagues from Latin America, but there's also Moultrie over there from India who maybe would like to have some comment or even come to sit here with us. That seat is for her, actually. Because what is so even, I don't know that from Germany, but what I found so Swedish here is it's everything so neat. I mean, you're demolishing great part of your city, and you clean the ruins up and everything so neatly and so properly. While we are used, I mean, those more than me, but I'm now 7 years old, so that I'm used every day of houses falling apart because the lack of maintenance and because of telluric movements, earthquakes, not mining movements, and here we also went with the colleagues when we went back to Luleå after Kiruna. We passed by Marion, and that was even more impressive than what I have seen here in Kiruna, which I thought was still more rural, and to tear down in a very organized way some houses, put away the ruins, and then it is green again, and you build a new city somewhere. But there are no houses falling apart, no people dying in these houses when they fall apart, and there seems to be no major citizen movement as we would know it in the case of Chile or other parts, where people reclaim to do it in a better and more human way. So that's a point. I don't know, Moultrie, perhaps you could comment something in that direction, if you want.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Well, you all have said so many things, so I don't have very much to say. So I will say only reflections, and by no means as reflections of anybody representing India. I have, in generations, no contact of people working with their hands and bodies, and or working close to mines or living in industrial settings, and coming from where I do, which is a city, but also coming from where I work, which is in some mining areas in the west and the central parts of India. Coming here is things couldn't be more different, and looking at the experience of Sweden in a post-industrial, in a deindustrializing, in a post, the and deindustrializing at the same time, I wonder how mining communities in absolutely poor parts of the world would cope up with something like this. And for me, this is a real study in contrast. So while I take away a lot of things to learn, I also take away this absolute unbridgeable gap between the realities of one, where I live and where the mines are in India, in Odisha, the state that I'm a little bit familiar with, and then Odisha and here. I think we are different planets. The realities, there are really no measures that are common. So to say that I will take back learnings would not be true. And really this would be an example of what would happen if mining towns would collapse in Odisha. That's what I've been thinking while walking here. Would people be rescued? Would houses be moved or churches or temples be safeguarded? No, because one of the areas and just to illustrate a landscape, there is a coal mining field in the west of India called Jharia, and Jharia mines have been under fire for 120 odd years, and it's a vast landscape that's simmering, and people live on it. So 400,000 people continue to live off that coal, picking coal and living on it, and it continues to burn. It's really like it's dystopia at a different level, and it's this year that the Indian government has put away a 670 million US dollars for rehabilitation of this area, and to make a master plan. And none of it is talking about heritage at the moment. We have so much to take care of, and it is still so little money. And therefore, so I take away really the stark contrast at the moment. These are good ways, in some ways sensitive things to do to many buildings, to sometimes to bridge with the community. But can we really do it? I don't know. We live in a different planet.
Thank you. We have a question in the audience. Ja, okej.
Thank you, Felicia.
Put things in perspective.
Yeah, really.
Thank you for all these presentations. I would like to raise a question actually for Kiruna, for you in Kiruna. I have been to Kiruna several times. I was here quite frequently in the 1980s. And I would say old Kiruna was very, well, it has a history from Hjalmar Lundbom. He was very strong, his spirit there, and you had his house and so on. There was also this magnificent building from Ralph Erskine and Schmalensee that was documenting, and it was a long history and a very, very important history from the 20th century. I would say Kiruna was a little bit in focus in those days. Then suddenly you became in focus over again because you are moving, and I wonder, and this I think must be a very difficult way. We had an old history, but it's not here. It's there. And you move the church, you move the grave of Hjalmar Lundbom, but how could you take over this history? And I would say the history of the big strike, 1969, that changed the whole Swedish society. They are so important things. And what I think that you are very close to year 0.
Yeah.
And I think from now and on, the great town movement, that's where the history starts. Or do you have any strategies for handling this very, very difficult question? As what you said also, Moshi, about that when a whole town just disappears and so on. And also I would say Germany, 1945. The history started over again. It is so great things when we should think about memories, personal memories, and so on. And also written history. Mostly, I would say we dealing with the heritage business, we can talk about Stone Age and thousands of years and so on. But now we are focusing on something else when you make the history of a place.
So, thank you for the question. I think I can start. Of course, Kiruna has a very special history and a very planned city from the beginning, and also a very planned new city here. And I can start with the talked about the buildings from the 60s, very important architecture value. And as the City Hall, you said Art van Schmales, a lot of famous artists wanted to come here. And like the City Hall, as you see, we have a new City Hall because the old one was too large to move. It was made in bricks, very big. And I did an inventory what to bring, and the municipality paid for it itself, no money from LKAB. So we have taken a lot of like bricks and special places, like the fireplace where you can sit and feel, and railings and so on. And now we have tried to reuse them in other buildings, like the new swimming pools that are coming. So I'm very looking forward to that building being open. And also, I did inventory, and a politician came and said, "You have forgotten the speaking place where you can speak in this great room, because that place was so important for the strike in 1969." So of course it's a very small item, we talk about items, but we have it in the new City Hall also to try to remember something. And also now we're building a new city, and we're trying to think, okay, what is important of the old city that we can bring but still made in a new way. So of course we have lost a lot of like landmarks, the Erskine buildings. Kiruna had a very great silhouette. So now we're trying to preserve create new landmarks, but also preserve landmarks as the mining towers that we feel like, okay, they were in the far distance before, we didn't notice them so much, but now they are in our new city, landmarks for a new city that we're trying to preserve. And also one thing that Hjalmar did also when he planned it, was Kiruna was very colorful. It was red, green and yellow and a lot of colors. And I think both me and Sofia looks at this new one and thinks, where is the colors? Now it's very white and gray. And of course I think building something in the 2020, I guess in the future we will say the colors were gray and white. But that is something also we are learning now, how the municipality can more steer like development plans. Okay, we have to have this and this and this. So the new Kiruna can be new, but also have something from the old.
What do you want? Maybe we can take the question before, and then I can add.
Vi kanske kan använda den där. Här.
Ja,
Yeah, I want to have a follow-up question. Speaker talked about inclusion and belonging. How the inclusion, and you included all the inhabitants here in Kiruna, the older ones, young. Are there groups discussing what is important and so on? What is memory? Is it bad memories or is it good memories? Or the inclusion here? Because in Kiruna you have a very strong company who have told everything in the city for so long time. Can people be aware of what their memory are? Are they allowed to present their memory? Because LKAB will always be the strongest here and decide everything mostly. Even if you have a democratic society, LKAB is so strong. How is people included, and bad memories and memories are not so very good here, and also very positive memories. The inclusion in the process going on now to the new city.
I will see if this works. I think it's been, to remember that 2004 they started and said we're going to move the city. And then they had a lot of dialogues and inclusion projects and stuff. And then it was kind of silent for a while, I would say. And then all of a sudden the new city came up, and there was kind of a lack of information in between from what we wanted and what we got. So I think, and that's what we also seen. And now I think more voices are being raised that people are not included in the process. So that's what also we working and what we put in. what we did put in this bid for European Capital Culture, that we saw that people are feeling left out and that every voice is not heard, and what happened in between, and is this really what we wanted? So for me, being working now, I think the most important thing is to start over. How do we get this inclusion and start talking to different ages, and especially the young, because we now here, first starting with this bid, and we ask the young people what they want. They're like, we have nowhere to be. We sit at home because we don't have any places where we can meet and do things together. So start up with that sentence and then keep on going. And we need to, but it takes time and money. And I also need to reflect, because in this move of the city, LKB have to pay for it, but they don't pay any extra for us working with the soft values. And also for relocating art and craft and that. We got amount of money for saying, let's do it all. But that was, I mean, when did we do that? It's more than 10 years ago. And I mean, we had the COVID and we had Ukraine war. So, I mean, also, we shouldn't just focus on time and money, but someone needs to do the job. Someone needs to talk to all these people. And that's actually costs money, because it needs to be persons setting. So that's what we also put in. And for me to collect these resources and try to start over, so we actually bring what we need, because Kiruna has been documented from day one since the city was started. We have a lot of really nice archives. We have here at the library the Kiruna section, and we have a photo archive, we have an art collection. We have a lot of things that we can show and talk about what's happening around us and our memories. And the TICCIH exhibition is a good example how we started, and also where young people were invited and asked, what do you want with this place? So we just need to keep the momentum and work even harder. And that's what I hope, that this opportunity of becoming European capital of culture, and that working together with others, learn from others, you coming here and learn us that there is ways of doing this. It's a way to move forward from here and now. But it's not easy, and as you say, there's a big company in town that kind of roll the dice, but how we want to work with them. I mean, they're not only bad guys. I mean, let's do this together. They also, many of them live in this city or in this region. So that's what I hope for, that we can actually keep up the pace. And we have one project called Kiruna, for example, that we want to talk about what's happening around us, where can we show our history, where can we learn about these places. So absolutely. Opportunity, challenge, and opportunity for the future, I would say. Hope that was the answer to your question.
I will be really quick. More than a question, is just a thought, a memory I want to share with you, because I think could be, I don't know, useful, or perhaps exists already. I remember in Venice, there is this initiative to collect videos, okay, made still with the with the Super 8, with not digital, not in a digital form, and refer to Venice. So there are privates, okay, that have this amount or this records, and so they give it to this. I think is a group of. I don't know exactly the identity of the group that are digitalizing this kind of videos, trying to, when it's possible, to geo-reference the record and to share with all the population. So it's really private, let's say, memory, yes, but at the same time is an act of sharing and with the community that, I don't know, I'm thinking about Kiruna, maybe could be also an enrichment in order to keep memories that are strongly related to private or to personal, let's say, experiences, no? And it's quite difficult to create a common and shared knowledge. Just
perfect. Keeping it.
Very inspiring, all the contributions, and so
my reflections come from this inspiration and are less optimistic. I was surprised by the peaceful message. I should say, don't say utopian, but illusionary. The idea of bringing communities, inviting communities together, let's have a dialogue, relax and be happy. I have not the impression that the communities present, at least in this conference, were so happy with each other, if present or not present. You know what I mean with the yesterday, Monday's inauguration. So community is not a peaceful introduction, as far as I have experienced. And the other thing, the term active forgetting, a synonym for exclusion, I understood at that time. So I have to quote what I experienced in Bhopal, and I'm happy that Musri is there. Some years ago, 27 years after the tragedy, here comes an important activist, important representative of the activists of that time, Lakshmi, and says a sentence that I'm shivering and it was irritating for me. We came here to negotiate what we want to remember and what we want to forget. And that was from the mouth of an activist. So at the end, Guy said something about conflicting memories, war of memories, agonistic. So I would like to have more information, more, not ideas, but experiences, how to embrace the conflict and not how to embrace the happiness.
I'm not sure if this is for me or for Guy or.
I think that embracing the conflict, it's and first of all, it's understanding that there is a problem, and the second is trying to make the most of what we have. While someone was speaking here, I think it was the gentleman in the middle. He said something about building a whole new history, and I remembered an archaeologist called Laurent Olivier, in which he says that the present is nothing more than the sum of all pasts that physically coexist. So Kiruna is in a tough spot because it's building in its past, but at the same time it's moving from it. I don't know if it will make sense what the story I will tell, but someone told me a story many years ago, and I still remember it, and it reminded me that when colonizers were attacking indigenous people in New Zealand or Australia, I'm not sure, people sometimes, and I not even remember if it was Australia, but that's how I was told. People had to, the communities had to flee and run fast and fast and fast. And every time that someone tried to stop, some other people said, no, we have to rush, we have to go. And every time that this happened, people keep wrapping up until that at some point someone said, no, we have to stop. And people started asking, why should we stop? And the answer that the elderly people said that we need to wait for our souls to come. And maybe the conflict that you're talking about is exactly understanding what are these souls that are lost amidst this whole process that is happening, and understanding how they can dialogue, and even if the dialogue is very harsh and hard to, and the things are hard to hear, and you're absolutely right that heritage is not, it will never be in history, will never be something peaceful, utopian happiness. But when we are brought together to discuss something, we have to be open to listening and to hearing things that we don't like. And I think listening is the first step to finding a solution to a problem. And I think that's it.
Yeah, I think I can just add a little thing. Sorry, just a little thing to add. In some places, the crisis is permanent. And in some places, the people are very tired to fight. So in that places is where the hopeness, it's very important. And in their places, I also found people who lose everything. And they really want to have the experience of being at peace. So, of course, the conflict is uncomfortable, but when you are tired about this, it's really important to turn the line on again, you know? It's like, it's injustice, of course, but we need to be able to recognize that we are diverse and we have diverse experience, and yeah, as a researchers, I think we are there just to build bridges. So that's why we try to make sense in different ways.
I have 2 sentences.
Yes.
Do you want to go
Yeah, I can
first?
just super short. I finish and then Marie.
We need to
Two
quit, but I
moderators.
want to say thank you for coming to Kiruna and sharing our stories and our reality. And I also want to address that we do work with hard memories and something that's not always fun and happy. We have a lot of things that are really tough to bear and that we are been carrying for a lot of years. And I think all of those memories and narratives have to be taken in consideration. And absolutely, it's diverse. And we can build bridges. And let's quit with that. And Marion, you can have final words. And then we're off.
I hope it's not going to be the final words, because we would really love to continue to be in touch and to help you with what you really need. If there's something you really need from us, please let us know. These guys are around in Europe, and we have more experts that can help with things that you may be needing in strategy planning or in workshops with young people, old people, conflicts. Whatever, you see that these souls of these Latin people are there, and TICCIH as a global organization and community is always solidary and happy to help. And my final words go to the people behind the scenes. I would like to give a heartfelt thanks to Clara, who is managing to take technology and filming technology and live streaming all over our Aurora building.
Thank you, Clara.
I would
like to give a big thanks to both people who are not here, the 2 technicians who are always helping me getting everything up.
Lovely. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's Morton, and also thanks to the library to the library. It's in English, yes. Yeah. Bibliothek of Kiruna. Thank you so much for the wonderful months we had planning this, and a particular thanks to Felicia, who was coordinating the not always in time people here. And thank you at the very back end, Esteban, right now in Valparaiso, who has organized and programmed all the live streaming we will have available on the YouTube channel of TICCIH. Thank you so much, and let's run to the book presentation.
Yes.
Run.